Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MetrObelisk Radio. Today we are looking at the most recent Terminator movie at the time of this release, Terminator Dark Fate. Now this is the moment that marked James Cameron's return to the franchise. Now all of these people who have been saying for years and years and years that James Cameron leaving the franchise was the worst thing to ever happen to mankind, and there hasn't been a good Terminator movie since 1991, and all the other sequels that include Rise of the Machines, Salvation, and Genisys are just nothing but cash grabs, man. But is any of that true? Did James Cameron returning to the franchise help it or hurt it? Now, before we get started, remember to follow the blog, Metrobeliskradio.blogspot.com, where you can stay up to date on all MetrObelisk Radio uploads, no matter if they're exclusive to the platform that you are currently watching or listening to this on. Now, with that out of the way, let's take a look at Terminator Dark Fate. Now, as always, we start off by looking at the creative team, and this movie was directed by Tim Miller. Now, the only feature films that he's directed are this movie and the first Deadpool movie with Ryan Reynolds and Morena Baccarin. But he has directed a lot of those CGI scenes for video games, like that's Star Wars: The Old Republic. A lot of those cutscenes were directed by him and his company. And then let's look at the writers for this movie, and we're going to start off with David Goyer. Now he's written a lot of movies that you might be familiar with. He's written movies such as Death Warrant with Jean-Claude Van Damme, Dark City, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. with David Hasselhoff, Blade 2, and Blade Trinity with Wesley Snipes, Batman Begins, Man of Steel, and Batman v Superman. Next, let's look at Justin Rose. Now, you've probably never heard of him. He's only written 2 movies prior to this one, and those 2 movies would be Contract Killers and Grassroots with Jason Biggs and Joel David Moore. And personally, I've never heard of either of those movies, so, most of you are probably in the same camp as I am. Next up, we have Billy Ray. Now, he's a writer that you may not have heard of by name, but you've heard of the movies that he's worked on. He's written movies such as Heart's War with Bruce Willis, Shattered Glass with Hayden Christensen, State of Play with Russell Crowe, The Hunger Games, Captain Phillips, Secret in Their Eyes, and Gemini Man with Will Smith. The next writer on the list is James Cameron himself. Now, he wrote the story for this movie, not the screenplay. He's written movies such as Aliens, The Abyss, True Lies, Titanic, and Terminator 1 and 2. Most of you probably already know that, so I'm not going to drag this on for too long. The next writer is Charles Egley. Now, he's a TV writer that's written episodes of shows such as St. Elsewhere, which gave us Denzel Washington. Moonlighting, that's the show that kickstarted Bruce Willis's career. NYPD Blue, The Shield, The Walking Dead, and created the show Dark Angel with Jessica Alba. And the last writer on this movie is Josh Friedman. Now, he's written movies such as Chain Reaction with Keanu Reeves, War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise, and The Black Dahlia with Aaron Eckhart and Scarlett Johansson. Now, he also worked on TV shows such as Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles, Emerald City for NBC, which only ran for 1 season, and Snowpiercer for TNT. Now let's take a look at the characters of this movie, and we're going to start off with Arnold Schwarzenegger as the T-800/Carl. Now, he's the T-800 from a different timeline that killed John Connor. Now, after that, his mind was freed by Skynet not existing. Yes, you heard me correctly. John Connor dies in this movie. And we'll get into that in just a couple of minutes. Then we have Linda Hamilton's return to Sarah Connor. Now, obviously, she's a lot older. She's still in Mexico living off the grid. And when a Terminator comes, she just hunts them down. Then we have Mackenzie Davis as Grace. She comes back in time to be the protector of the new leader of the human resistance. And my problems with her tie into the narrative, which we'll get to. And I know I just stated that. I'm kind of sounding like a broken record here. Next, we have Natalia Reyes as Danny Ramos. And she's pegged as the new John Connor. And the only issue I really take with her is that she wants nothing to do with the future. And that's fine. But that took John Connor until Terminator 3 to get to that point, after he learned that Judgment Day was inevitable. And finally, we have Gabriel Luna as Rev 9. He's the Terminator in this movie. Now, he's very similar to John Connor from Terminator Genisys. However, he's able to separate himself from his endoskeleton while not being damaged or harmed in any way, shape, or form. Now, it's never explained how he is able to even pull that off. He just pulls it off. Why? I don't know, because, hey, look, cool robot on screen going bang bang and slicing people's fucking throats and guts flying everywhere. Yay! Now let's discuss this movie narratively. Now, this movie opens up in Guatemala in 1997. Judgment Day with Skynet was prevented, and John Connor is killed by another T-800. How did the T-800 find him in Guatemala in 1997? We don't know, but now, franchise over. And, I mean, I understand why they would send back multiple T-800s to try to kill John Connor. Skynet would try to send back multiples to ensure its own existence. Like, that, to me, is not a huge leap in logic. But after John Connor gets killed, knowing that Judgment Day was successfully prevented because of this movie, I have to now ask the inevitable question. What was the point of the Terminator in Terminator 2 Judgment Day? If the first two movies were about protecting John Connor, then why kill him off in the third movie? Oh, did I forget to mention that James Cameron came out before this movie released and said everything after Terminator 2 is no longer canon? James Cameron destroyed the value of his own franchise, and this was not a Tim Miller decision, mind you. James Cameron has gone on and on and on for years that he wanted to kill John Connor. So if the Terminator franchise ever got back to James Cameron, which it did unfortunately, then it was safe to assume that it would die a very slow and very painful death. So what was this movie then? Honestly, it's just a rehash of the first movie. Instead of protecting John Connor, now we have to protect Danny Ramos. Instead of Kyle Reese coming back, we have Grace. Grace is human, but is augmented. So now we've introduced ideas from the Deus Ex video game series, literally with that one. Now, augmentations are not unique to Deus Ex, but Deus Ex is the most famous example of having a main character with augmentations as a result of their bodies getting blown to fucking pieces. And we don't even get introduced to Carl, that's Arnold's T-800, about halfway through the movie. Then the movie becomes find an EMP so that they can kill this Terminator and save Danny Ramos from getting killed and basically become new leader of human resistance. Yay! And I know that there's more to this movie, but honestly, I just don't care to go into it any further beyond this point because I'm going to get way too pissed off and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole for like 15, 20 minutes, picking apart every single little thing wrong with this movie narratively. Now, how was this movie received? This movie has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 70% based on 332 critic reviews, with the critics' consensus saying, quote, Terminator Dark Fate represents a significant upgrade over its immediate predecessors, even if it lacks the thrilling firepower of the franchise's best installments, end quote. So even the critics are saying that this is not the best movie ever made. And this movie has an audience score of 82% based on 13,006 audience reviews. And this movie has a Metacritic score of 54 based on 51 critic reviews and a user score of 4 out of 10 based on 804 ratings. And this movie sits on IMDb at 6.2 out of 10 based on 132,827 reviews. Now, this movie was made on a budget of $185 million and grossed $261,119,292 worldwide. Now, reports suggest that Paramount lost anywhere from $100 to $120 million on this movie, depending on where you read it from. Now, it's safe to say that we're probably not going to see a Terminator 7. Now, Tim Miller tried to come out after this movie to say that audiences were disappointed with the last three movies. He also believed that some audiences, quote, hate it because it's the sixth movie, and Hollywood should be making original movies and not repeating franchises, end quote, blah, 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 bullshit, 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 bullshit. What also didn't help this movie either was Tim Miller. I distinctly remember IndieWire having an article that was headlined, quote, Tim Miller says Terminator Dark Fate will scare the fuck out of misogynistic internet trolls, end quote. Please tell me how insulting your own potential audience is going to help you, especially in 2019 when you had all these celebrities coming out left and fucking right saying that you were a racist, a sexist, homophobe, xenophobe, transphobe, blah, 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 whatever phobe or ism if you don't support, X movie or Y movie, blah, 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 blah. And honestly, After the filmmakers killed John Connor off in the first 5 minutes of the movie, I was bored. I no longer fucking cared. This was just the first movie all over again, with just a different coat of paint. They talk about how Skynet no longer exists now, but Legion now exists, which is basically just Skynet 2.0. Now that makes sense given that once Pandora's box is open, it can never be closed again. And I'm going to be blunt with you right here. I only watched this movie because I was watching the first 5, so I might as well talk about the latest Terminator Dark Fate, despite what I was hearing about it. I went in with an open mind, but I still don't like the movie. And I'll end the episode off with this. If the intention was to make a reboot, then it was unnecessary. We already had a decent reboot with Terminator Genisys. I know I ragged on that movie a bit, but that movie wasn't all that bad. That movie made it known early on that it was an alternate timeline. When does this movie take place? Immediately after Terminator 2. That's fine and dandy. But killing off John Connor made it feel like a reboot. And I'm going to go a step further. I believe that the best thing for the Terminator series was Jim Cameron stepping away from it. If James Cameron had made his Terminator 3 when he wanted to in the late 90s, we may very well have gotten this movie back then. The series would not be beloved by many sci-fi fans. The series more than likely would have been remembered as a missed opportunity. Yeah, the first 2 movies were quite strong, but my god, the 3rd movie dropped the ball so fucking hard that this series just may never recover. And that's exactly what happened with Dark Fate. With Paramount losing anywhere from $100 to $120 million on the movie, again, depending on what you're reading, it's pretty safe to say that there won't be a Terminator 7. Terminator 3 and Terminator Salvation were not bombs because they were terrible. They were only bombs because of their overinflated budgets of $200 million a movie. After watching this pile of shit, all I have to wonder is how would have the Terminator Genisys sequels turned out? To all the James Cameron fanboys that I know personally in real life, and the online pundits that put Terminator 2 on this high fucking pedestal and say that the series got worse after James Cameron left, I've got 5 words for you. Fuck you, I was right.